You see, along the way, we as Christians, and I'm talking about along the way, thousands of years of Christianity, have tried to balance the transcendence of God, meaning He's God, the creator, and the personal nature of God, the immanence of God. He's God who came in flesh. He lives in us, and that's a hard balance. And so sometimes we emphasize the transcendence, sometimes we emphasize the immanence, but we need the tension of both because they're both true of God. The danger for us is that we think just in the religious formalism, meaning just going through the motions, just dressing up, playing the part, doing the thing, that we actually and legitimately know God deeply and personally. But if you haven't today spent time with God and talked to Him personally, it doesn't matter what you're doing right now in this place in the formal nature. It's personal, brothers and sisters. I want you to know God. I want you to talk to God. I want you to yearn for more of God. You see, when we meet God, what happens is He begins to change our desires. And we see this bear out when we run from sin, right? But what do we run to? We run to God. And so we're not seeing genuine repentance and genuine life change if all we're doing is just showing up in a building every once in a while. If all we're doing is just changing our behavior. God's called us to more than that. He wants you to know Him. He wants you to commune with Him. He wants the best moment of your day to be that time with Him. And if it's not, I would submit to you that something is very wrong. I believe we've pushed a cold religious formalism and people don't want it. Why? Let me ask it this way. If every gathering you had with your family and friends was a formal, black tie, catered meal, how often would you want to engage in that relationship? I want you to think about the difference between yesterday and today in many of our worlds. Yesterday, we wore team colors. Some of you did. You gathered around some casual, informal food, and you talked about casual, informal things, and you had a blast. And then today, for some reason, we feel like we need to get all formal instead of being personal with God and with each other. Brothers and sisters, there's a world of people who don't want that. And I believe that they're right in not wanting that because that is not Christianity. Christianity is the transcendence and the immanence of God coming together. It doesn't mean that we wear jerseys in here because Lord knows that would not go well for unity, would it? What it means is we move beyond the formalism. And with this, I'm not talking about dress. I'm not talking about any of that. That's style stuff. What I'm talking about is being real with God and with one another. I'm talking about in your personal prayer life. When's the last time you wept before God because you were so burdened and you just wanted God to know? When's the last time you were truly and legitimately joyful and you just couldn't wait and help but talk to God about it? That's what I'm talking about, brothers and sisters. It's not just reading a scripted prayer. It's having a conversation with a personal God. That's what the psalmist longs for. He cries out for His face, pene, His face, meaning His presence. There's this internal call for communion with God, and it's in you right now. And the devil wants to distract you from it, and he will distract you with religion. He will distract you with many good things so that you will run and flee from the best. But make no mistake about it, he will distract you. We see the internal call for communion with God. Come, said my heart, seek His face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. Every one of us has a heart right now that's saying, come, seek His face. The question is, or all of us responding with, Lord, I will seek your face? May that be our prayer moving out of here this day. The internal call for communion with God. Secondly, the immutable covering in communion with God. Uh-oh. That sounds like a Baptist sermon right there, doesn't it? That's some good double alliteration for you. I want you to see this. The immutable, meaning the unchangeable covering. Why do I use that word? Because it's in the text. And I'm going to show you. The immutable covering that we find in communion with God. He says, my heart says you seek his face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Why would he follow up with that? That seems odd, does it not? I'm going to seek your face. Lord, don't turn your face. Why does he say that? There is an acknowledged, this is how we know this is genuine prayer. There is an acknowledged superficial fear that God is turning away from him. He's acknowledging that. He's being honest, is he not? Now, for God to turn his face away is to abandon him. That's the picture on the cross, by the way. The Father turns his face from the Son. It's like he's his enemy because sin is on him. So he's crying out, God, don't treat me like your enemy. Don't turn your face from me. Why would he even consider that God would turn away from him? Well, we see two reasons here in the text. Number one, apparently he has his own personal transgressions. Because he says, be merciful. You don't cry out for mercy unless you need mercy. And you don't need mercy unless you've sinned against a holy God. Be merciful, he says. So he's aware of his own personal transgression and he cries out for mercy. There's the realization within that he has done something that would or could cause God to turn from him. And he cries out for God to not turn from him. We see this in Psalm 51, which is the confession of David to God after Bathsheba. David says to God, as he's praying to him, he says, my sin is always before me. That is such a fascinating statement of David. And the picture is that as David prays to God, all he sees is a layer, a residue of his own sin, and he can't see beyond it. And so for David, the question is, well, as God looks at me, is he seeing the same wall of sin? Is he seeing the same residue of sin? And that's often how we approach God, is it not? It's so funny to play hide and seek right now with my youngest kid, Nehemiah. Nehemiah's funny for a number of reasons, but one of the things about Nehemiah when you play hide and seek, and this is where a lot of kids, they do this, but for me it's present. As he tries to hide, he looks for somewhere to hide. If he can't find it, he does this. He stands there as still as he can with his eyes closed. Because in his mind, if he can't see me, I can't see him. Isn't it incredible? Isn't it fascinating? He actually has his sin